to another episode of Morelia Python Radio, and in this episode we are joined by Chuck Poland from the Reptile Fight Club podcast right here on the NPR network. He is also one of the few people in the world to reproduce Halmahera Scrub Pythons, and he did it not once but twice, and he's going into his third season now to try it again. We're going to discuss his experiences with establishing a group of these rare pythons and what are some of the reasons or thinking for them being such a difficult species to breed in captivity. We will also touch on Chuck's approach to keeping carpet pythons outside. Remember the old days of MP, Owen, when it was just a dream to have a rough scale and dream of breeding a Halmahera scrub?
And dreams of various other creatures,
yeah. Go on the forums about, not enough heat, too much heat. They live in the rainforest where it's raining all the time.
98 degrees constantly underneath a lamp pointed directly at their head.
Goodness.
Yeah, I know. So
don't worry. Chuck is on the right path to figuring it out. But we're going to be talking about that. And I've had, how many have you worked with, Owen?
Scrubs?
Halmahera scrubs.
None.
Not scrubs. Halmaheras? You never had them?
Never
yes,
worked.
It's
no.
like B.
No. I mean, they were there. I didn't touch them. Like, come on now. It's because the Halmaheras are on this little pedestal in my mind. It's like it's like touching various other creatures. It's like I feel like I'm gonna kill it if I look at it sideways, and I don't wanna. So I have handled
that to the big boys.
Yeah. Listen. Yeah, I'll handle my king snakes and stuff like that. I'll stay down here with the dirt snakes. It's right. The helms. I mean, I've handled a couple. I've definitely checked them out. I've played with yours and Chris's and stuff like that. They're very cool. I always just kind of dipped a toe into scrubs a little bit, so I never really got into the. I feel like you have to spend a little bit of time with like Tannenbar and then like move up the bar neck, and then maybe you can dip into a Halmahera after that. I always felt like there's same thing with Bowl and I. There are way better people working with this. I don't need to jump into this.
I like it, Owen.
Right.
I like it. I like your approach.
Thank you.
Let everybody else.
I'm gonna leave it to the professionals. I'm gonna be over here. Yeah.
You just play once a week on the podcast.
I do.
That's all right.
Very rarely, if that.
But we're going to be diving into it and talking about, all things Halmahera scrubs. And if there's time, Chuck also keeps his carpet pythons outside. What a dream.
I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that too. But before that, anything going on with you? Anything you want to hit on?
Nah. I mean, we're just keeping going. I finally assembled my cages. So
yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're good. The entire time Buddy's over, he's like, Eric could have got in the cage. I'm like, dude, he could have lived in this cage. It's an 8-foot cage. He would have been very happy in it. So
what's going in there?
Olive pythons and my retic.
Okay. And my retic.
Isn't that a weird sentence?
And my retic.
And my retic,
bro.
Yeah, my one retic that's just still here. Yeah, so
is that the one from Matt?
Yep.
Purple pineapple.
The whatever the fuck he said it was, and he's gonna get mad at me when he listens because he's told me 10 million times. Yeah, that it's like a platy tiger. Super het hippopotamus. I don't know.
Who cares?
Who gives a damn?
So they're all moved in? Everything's good?
Not yet. I got to put the branches and stuff in first.
Branches.
I know. When a tree falls,
nothing but the best.
When a tree falls in your yard, a normal person is like, I must call someone now to remove it. I am like, I see some kick-ass branches here, so I'm gonna take my chainsaw. I'm gonna go nuts. So this would have been sitting out here waiting for this time. So
the idea of you with a chainsaw
isn't it
kind
a
of
scary
makes me
thing?
nervous.
I don't know why Melissa lets me do this, but
yes, very good. Okay, yeah, not a whole lot going on over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing really.
It's weird. It's the weird, slow portion of the year where it's like, what's happening? Well, nothing. Come back in a month or two. I'm probably gonna be drowning in eggs. But yeah. Right now
we have. Are you ready for this weekend with the Snowmageddon that we're about to get?
What?
Well, you might not get it because you're further west. It's
Not
all
that
east.
further west. I mean, what's happening? I wasn't told of such things.
You don't even know?
No.
Right. How can you be a snake breeder and not
Listen,
be
not
following the
all of
weather?
us run
Come
a
on, man.
supermarket. Then when the second this
It's not a moon
snowflake hits the
cycle.
ground, everybody
Jesus.
freaks out and gets eggs, milk, and bread. You know?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, it's going to be a foot this weekend.
Shit.
Yeah. But I think you might be in the clear, though.
I think I am because I don't see anything on my stuff. I think you're just screwed. That means your stuff will breed, though, and mine will just stare at each other.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Well, we got that going on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Hey, Rob's here.
Rob is here. What's
Rob's
up, Rob?
here.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys? Had to be here to celebrate Chuck and his achievements. I can't believe it's taken so long to get him on here.
Yeah, right.
Who's in charge of scheduling? God,
Right?
I don't know.
Or at least
It must be
back
that
on here.
OI
It's
back.
been 9 or 10 years, huh, Chuck?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So.
I think so.
Yep.
Something like that.
There he is. Welcome, Chuck.
Welcome. Yes. I don't know. I heard my name. I chimed in.
That's fine. That's usually what happens.
Yes.
There's no schedule here. I don't know how Justin runs the ship over there, but things are a little bit more loosey goosey on the.
Yeah, that was back in the days when we used to do the show live, and we would do the chat on the forum.
Oh my God.
Remember those days?
Oh my God.
Wow, the forum. I do miss the forum.
You say that constantly, but thank God we've moved past it.
I'm sorry, my Gen X
Stop it. Stop
forum
it. Stop
forum love is more so than my Facebook.
Well, do you remember the days of just those fights that you were just like, oh my God, I got to go to bed?
Yes.
But when you wake up in the morning, you're like trying to catch up, and it's just
You
like
have to read.
you're riveted. Yeah, and you're people. You just know from the tempo of the conversation that people are just fingers flying, writing posts.
Keyboards were broken. Like
Yep. That was the best.
I
think it was cool too because you could disconnect from it, right? You couldn't do it on a phone or anything. It was like you had to be on a computer, you had to be there, and it was like you would soak up as much as you could and be like, okay, I have to come back later,
Yeah. You could almost tell when Nick and Yasser would set the conversation down for a while and walk away, and then they would come back because it would you could palpably tell that it came down like orders of magnitude and being heated, and it was so good. It was so good.
Great.
It was good.
Man, it was the best.
Yeah,
it was.
good.
I love that forum.
Yeah.
And everybody that was on it, it was great. It was so good.
It really was.
But what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Now we're gonna have. I guess we're gonna have virtual forum pretty soon. It's gonna be, you're gonna have.
Yeah, but now you're gonna be able to scream at each other, see
Right.
each other, yell at each other. Yeah. So
the octagon is gonna be for real.
Yeah.
You're just gonna have people in virtual just beating each other from their own living rooms.
Yeah.
A new angle for Reptile Fight Club.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, Owen, go ahead. You
All
start
right.
us off.
So, Chuck, you're back. And obviously some things have changed from the last time we had you on to now. What made you want to work with the Halmaheras?
Yeah, so I started into carpets back in the MP days, and was always a big Yasser fan, and he was a big scrub guy back then.
Yeah.
And I first got into, so I picked up a tandem bar that was an F2 from Ryan Young, is how I started into scrubs. And then Dave Prada bar necks, Clastolepis that I got from Triple L back in the day. And I was just hooked, oh my gosh, majestic, amazing, feisty, but yet, you kind of figure it out and it's fun. And that's really where I started. And kind of the Halmahera was the uncrackable nut back then. And, it was just nobody, don't even get them. You're going to kill them. And so, I was kind of like I think most people were, and some are of I don't want to mess with this. I don't want to, I don't want to kill him. But at some point I just was like, yeah, I'd do that. And I got on Cam's, I got on Bushmaster's list.
Nice.
And Cam had a trio come in, and I, got in touch with him and was like, I'll take them. And it was a reverse trio. So it was a female and 2 males. And I was like, I don't care. That's fine. I'll take it. I think I paid like $500 for all 3 of them. Like Jesus. It was not expensive. It was not expensive. And so I said, yeah, but why not? What do I have to lose?
Mm-hmm.
And, was just really lucky to, have guys like Bob Rock here and Justin and Terry Phillip and just, Ryan Young and just all these guys to just bounce all these ideas off of and like, hey, have you seen this? What do you think about this? Where's your head out about this? And I just, pulled a student of the serpent, and I feel like I got kind of lucky, honestly. I think it's, I know people working with a lot bigger group than I have, who've had, just as hard of a time, and it wasn't easy. I don't think, establishing Tracy is an easy thing for anybody. So there was definitely a struggle, and you kind of take the struggle in step by step increments. So I mean, I certainly, when I first got him, wasn't even thinking about breeding him. Like that was so far out of the realm. But when I got him in 2011, so it was like after I kept him alive for a number of years, I was like,
next step.
I'm doing something okay here. This is a good sign. So yeah, it was just, it just kind of was a natural progression for me. I've liked scrubs from back in the day. I kind of think they're kind of the they're kind of the bigger, more majestic carpet python for me. And I like, I like the attitude. I like, but I also think they get a bad rap, what I mean? And I think you definitely have those just pissed off, big scrubs that'll scare the shit out of you. But I mean, that said, I have had some carpets that were just like anything I ever got from Todd and Carrie was Satan. Like it was just the most crazy snake. So, I mean, everything, everything can be a monster. It just depends on whether it's a 6-foot monster or a 10-foot monster. So.
It just pick your poison,
Yeah.
And I totally, I like the idea. I kind of feel like people would get a pair and then immediately chuck them together and be like, it won't breed. It's like, no shit, Sherlock. Like you got to give it some time to establish. So, and that's definitely something. So it's cool that you got them, and then it took all the way up to, because will be your 3rd season going into it. So it took a considerable amount of time. So out of your hounds, do they have the same kind of phenotype? I mean, do they look alike? Because I know I've seen a bunch of different looking ones, and I know Eric had 2 that looked completely different from each other, and there's a lot of that going around too.
Yeah, there seems to be, and I am not, I am not the locality scrub. I just don't follow it like I used to. I'm not into it like I used to. I'm just over in my little corner doing what I do, kind of thing. Yep. So I've seen, people talking about different kind of phenotype looking Tracier that were supposedly collected in a different island or a different area. And, I definitely have seen, stuff that's really light in color, stuff that looks very prototypical, stuff that has kind of weird pattern, which, to me fits with all of the scrubs and the carpets and everything in that kind of, large orbital complex. They are highly variable. And I think early on, and you could see some of the Xanax stuff, and you could see some of these examples of mutations or phenotypes that are untypical, but a lot of the early stuff coming in looked very similar. And now we're starting to see stuff that doesn't look phenotypical as to what we've seen. And so most of all 3 of my adults are what I would consider pretty prototypical for Tracier. Yeah. but the babies, some of them, just like carpets or anything else, look amazing. Some of them have, like, I have just these browns that are, I mean, for, you know, a first generation wild, you know, captive bred animal, look fantastic, like amazing, fantastic. Hard to catch how great, like the photos look great, but hard to catch how great they look
even better in person, kind of a deal. Gotcha.
But I also have animals that have kind of the brown and this black kind of contrast that's like just sick. So you know, I see Tracier going that direction of, you know, anything that gets kind of line bred, if it can get done, to having some really cool looks that come out of them. You know, if we can get enough people producing them and get, you know, get them kind of really going.
That is cool. I do.
Yeah, that's super interesting, Chuck. You know, I've had probably 20 to 25 wild ones, and there is such a range of looks that I'm so fascinated to see as you're growing out, you know, as you're growing these things out, especially you holding on to all of them and growing them out. Super interesting to see what the natural range is out of what yours look like, and having some, you know, insight into, okay, this is the parent phenotype and this is what they're then looking like, as opposed to sitting on a whole range of, you know, well, 10 inches to 6-7 foot long ones and saying, oh, I have no idea what this comes from, you know. Save man, that striper was something. That was a bummer, but that's fantastic.
For sure. And I mean, you know, I've contacted Ben Morel and want to kind of get some sheds to him and kind of figure out, you know, genetic gender and then relatedness. And you know, to be honest, like, and we'll get into it later, but I have no idea who the sire is, because I'm using multiple males. Like, couldn't tell you. But nonetheless, some really interesting stuff comes when you use multiple males with scrub pythons. So I know, Bob, you and I have talked about that. You know, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think it, you know, just in general with all snakes, that we underestimate them, and it's one of these things where I think the obsession with wanting the lineage, whether it's morph based or whatever, has led folks to have a lot less snakes about which to worry.
So multiple. We're going to get into the multiple male things later, because I don't want to just jump right into that, because now I have all these other difficult species, and I do have multiple males.
I've been telling you this for like months.
No
man.
one's talking to you, so it's. I'm talking to Chuck. It's So no, I think that I like that idea, because it's another outside of the box kind of a thing. So I don't know. We'll get into the multiple male things further down. So, but yeah, that's awesome. That's got my gears turning. So now I'm broken.
That's the best way. That is the best way, is just get your gears turning. Get with people who get your gears turning, because that shit works.
Yeah. And now
100%.
Now I'm not thinking about anything else except all the questions. But so your group, can you kind of touch a little bit about what you kind of went through to establish them, and
100%.
What kind of like difficulties you might have had, and also stuff you kind of used to help you out a little bit further along that way?
Sure. So my animals came in I think I got them in 2012. I approximate them to be 2011 animals. They were roughly 100 grams when they came in, roughly all three of them. I established them in tubs in my front closet of my living room, and I just basically kept them in the dark. I mean, I would have a light in there, so they would have a light, but I didn't sweat like a day-night cycle. And, you know, they were on some belly heat, but I really wasn't trying to heat them heavily. You know, just let them chill, and tried feeding. I think feeding took me maybe 2 months to get going. And I, you know, tried rodents, and then I definitely tried like fowl, and eventually I just kind of went back to rodents, and I started drop feeding stuff, and was just like, hey, they're gonna eat when they're gonna eat. And I think that's probably a word of advice I would give is they're not eating because they're stressed out, because don't feel comfortable. It's not because you're not offering the right prey source. Like when they're hungry, they will eat. And mine just started eating. And so, that's how I continued to just feed them, is drop feed it and leave it in the middle, leave it as after the lights went out, come back in the morning, eating. Win. Awesome. Perfect. Move on. And, I continued that until they were kind of feeding pretty regularly. And then I moved them into tubs, and kept them in that kind of same deal, kind of kept them, but had them, out of the closet where stuff was going on. They were in a room where, they would see some foot traffic, but it wasn't like a main room in my house. So it wasn't, they weren't experiencing a lot of foot traffic. I have never given any of my Tracier hides or things like that. I wanted them to feel secure in their enclosure rather than hiding rather than feeling secure in something in their enclosure. To me, I wanted them to interact with that space and feel safe in that space and be able to move around that space. And so, they would just curl up in a corner and hang out there. And I kept doing that once I got them into cages. And, they were, I don't know, they were probably 7 feet in 36 by 24 by 24 cages. My male, who was probably the biggest one of the time, he had a head that it was like, I don't know, it wasn't quite as big as my fist, but like he looked funny because his head was huge, but his body was super slender.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's just, I lean, and I still fed them. Like, it wasn't like I didn't feed them. It's just, when you're overfeeding them, they'll get fat, but they like to stay long and lean. And if you kind of just pay attention, and you just like any animal that, has to fight for food, they will eat at any opportunity. So you just need to resist the urge to feed them all the time. So yeah, I think that's pretty much, that pretty much covers, how I kind of started them out. I handled them a little bit when they were younger. I tried not to, hands off as much as possible. And just kind of tried to do things that continued that idea of hands off, where, their space is their space. And you're not always in there invading their space, and, let them kind of be like, my yard. Right. And, and it was really interesting because I had worked with, some chondros, and I had some Biot chondros that I had gotten from Ed Bradley, and they were just like nervous, really sketchy, green tree pythons. And like during the day, you could like, if you were to touch them or tap them on the head, they'll duck their head. They don't want any part of you. Right. They don't, they don't want conflict, but if you fuck with them too much, then they'll want to fight. And that was really what that's the correlation that I drew, was like, oh, these guys are just like chondros and nervous chondros. They don't want any part of it. And I think, I had heard Rob say one time that he noticed that when he felt like they were really stressed is they freeze. And that dude, 100%, they freeze or they hide, or they're not that fight, like a typical scrub python will kind of want to fight you or whatever. Nah, These guys don't really, they're not, I mean, if you provoke them to the point where they feel like they need to be aggressive, they will. But, and you know, at a certain point, I just kind of left them alone, didn't mess with them. And at a certain point, it was like a switch flipped in them. And all of a sudden, they just started acting like every other scrub that I've ever encountered. And now they're at the glass. They're like looking around. What's going on? What you doing? You gonna feed me? What's going on? What you doing? You cleaning? What's up? And you know, they're cool. Like they're fine. They'll smash. You know, if they think they see something move fast, they'll smash the glass. Like, oh, coming at it. You know, like just very like stuff I'm used to. And that's when I saw that, I was like, aha.
Okay. Now we're good.
Now some things have changed. And I think getting them from point A, i.e. stuck in some closet in a tub in the front of your room in a dark off place, to acting like that every other scrub that you've ever, you know, dealt with, that's the key. That's the and it's a long-term thing, it's a slow thing, and you just have to kind of let them do, you know, do you, boo, like let them do it, you know, and they will. I just, you know, and I think that, you know, it's easy for us to want to like intervene in our animals' journey, and they're not about that. They're like, get out of my yard, you know.
It kind of reminds me of like when you keep monitors like correctly. I think crocodile monitors come to mind, right? They're walking around with a crocodile monitor on their shoulder at a show. They're like, look how tame it is. It's like, it's because it's like freezing cold and it's not
stressed, and either temp stressed or, you know, you know, acutely stressed. I'm so glad you brought that up, Chuck. Yeah, that like, oh, the notion that they're somehow tame compared to everything else. No, they're just, you know, so stressed that their stress response is exactly what you described. So no, when they're feeling themselves, they're just like any other. So actually, you should hope that they become that way.
And when they start to get that adult size, it's just like carpets. They go from that nervous snake to that confident snake, and they know when they're safe. You know, they know when they can strut out and they can, you know, not have to worry about it. And it's just really interesting because you see that flip, and I think anybody who's kept enough carpets kind of is like, yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about there.
Yeah,
you know, that nervous, bitey, flighty to that like, no. I'm cool. Like,
the
you know,
the 1-year-old that gets to that point where it's just like, the water's over there. Get the fuck out.
Yeah. Like what were the cues that led you to say, okay, now it's time to move out of the closet? Or was it just like, it's
rolling
been long
dice.
enough, it's time to move?
Yeah, I mean, again, some of this was a while back, so I'm kind of just, you know, thinking back a little bit here as best I can, but I think when it was, they were feeding all, you know, drop feeding regularly, and I didn't feel like moving them was gonna set me back, where I was like, all right, they seem to be in a routine, right? Things seem to be steady here. Let's move them. Let's see how it goes. Right. Okay. Things are still happening the same way. Okay, cool. Now we're here. And you know, and it went from that to their intermediate sized enclosure, and then eventually went into their animal plastics cages. And I ended up breeding them, you know, keeping them for years and years in those AP cages, and bred them in those AP cages. So, you know, it was one of those things where they probably needed new enclosures, but you know, they were doing so well in those, and they were used to them. And you know, I think with hard to establish wild caught stuff, that long steady state economics of their environment is a huge factor in getting them to where they're like, okay, I feel comfortable and I'm ready to make reproductive decisions right now. Where if they're getting moved around, and you know, you see it, like people will be like, oh, I had to move, I moved houses, and I had to move my reptile room, and I got nothing that year because the snakes are like, yo,
everything's changed.
I don't know, is it safe for me to you know, reproduce this year? I don't know. I'm going to wait it out. I'm going to see how this plays out. So, I mean, I think that's and I don't see why a wild caught animal would be any different. If anything, they're probably more sketched out about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then what is it? And you're always your best breeders are the ones that have been raised in your system from like day one, like hatchlings all the way up. So it's like they already know what the routine is, and they know this is normal. This is what I'm used to. So yeah,
I think like a lot of people have this idea that with wild caught pythons or snakes or whatever, that I'm just going to hit it with some dewormer and
it's a panic here,
ready to go,
spray it down, and then there you go.
And what's really interesting is I never dewormed. I never did anything to them. I just left them alone, and I got so much shit for, you're not going to be succeeding. You didn't deworm it. It's full of parasites. And like, okay, I don't know. Its poop looks pretty normal. It's eating. Like,
it's not moving. It's fine.
Why am I going to try and shove medicine down his throat or stab it with a needle? Like when everything doesn't seem to warrant that. And you get stuff. You've gotten stuff that's wild caught that's like, this thing looks like shit. This thing has got something going on. Like, but if it starts to eat, and maybe they look a little rough when you first get them in, but once you get some food in them, they start shedding and they start eating regularly. You're like, oh, okay, right. They look pretty good. Like, and if they clean up like that, and there's no need to go through all of that, especially if you're dealing with something that's not going to be bothered by it, then go for it. You know what I mean? But if it's a high stress, difficult thing, like you're just asking,
grip it up
trouble.
and shove a tube down its throat.
Exactly.
Like, I'm sure this is great for you.
I don't know what happened. It just died. I don't get it.
So weird.
What did I do? So, I think that, and that's not to say that stuff doesn't come loaded with parasites. If I were to get adults, they probably have parasites, but maybe my first priority isn't dealing with the parasites. It's getting them to feel comfortable so that the parasite load isn't sending them on a downward trajectory, right? Because they had the parasite load out in the wild and they were just doing fine. And then they got all stressed out and then they go downhill. So it's, it's about the stress. It's about the acclimation. It's not necessarily about the parasite load. And if you have an older animal that you're pretty sure has a parasite load, you can deal with that, but that probably shouldn't be your first priority.
Yeah. Very cool. So, what size?
Eric's muted.
Eric, Eric is muted. He just talks to himself every once in a while.
You can't come in.
Yeah, pretty much. I was gonna say we're going back. What did you say it was? 2011.
11. Yeah.
That's okay. When I got them in 2012, but I approximated them to be 2011 animals.
Okay. So no Weather Spark, no iPhone, no. None of that stuff is like. How did you go about trying to figure out? Because there was a lot of debate back in the days on how to keep these things, and obviously everybody was wrong.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, obviously, I took the cue from everybody not having success and said, well,
don't do that.
Nobody fucking knows what they're talking about, right? Like, so I mean, it's pretty safe to say whatever I try, and I was kind of on that kick. Where I had listened to, and I don't remember if it was an early NPR or a reptile radio that Terry Phillip did, where he just went through and he just was like, whatever you think you don't know. And if you're not experimenting, then don't tell me how it is, right?
Right.
And you're not going to find a guy who's too much more successful with such a wide range of reptiles all under one roof. So, when I heard that, I was just like, man, that flipped my lid. So I don't know what I'm talking about. And, the conventional wisdom, like ball pythons were hard to breed when we first got them in, chondros were impossible to breed when we first got them in. And now they're so
there's no season for ball pythons. They just breed all the time. Yeah.
And so, it's one of those things where these things do fine in the wild. They once we understand what's happening, they do find in captivity. So it's an us getting out of the way issue. And since unfortunately we provide all of the environmental inputs a lot of times for these animals, it's ours to screw up. And so, I think I took a lot of what Terry said about we keep stuff too warm, and that a python's average preferred body temperature is around 80 degrees. And I was like, okay, well, let's see how that rolls. And that's how I started keeping them. And so in my snake room, I hold probably somewhere between 78 and 80 degrees year round. That is a flat ambient, and some, like all the babies, they get no supplemental heat. They just exist in that 78 to 80 degrees. They eat, they shed, they do everything fine. And I see no reason, once I get them into cages and things like that, and I actually put them into a reproductive program, I'm going to start cycling their temperatures. And I certainly cycle the adults' temperatures a little bit, but primarily year round, if they're not in a reproductive cycle, they get that 80 degrees. And it'll fluctuate day to night, but it's pretty steady. And if you look at weather data from those islands, they would have you believe that it's very warm and humid, but if you think about what that environment is there's a tree canopy there. So, if they're sitting up at the top of the tree canopy, maybe they're warmer or getting more sun, but it can be nice and cool down there. So in my mind, I thought, well, why don't we try it down there and see how that works? And I think, one of the things that we do is we probably cook sperm by keeping males too warm. So I thought, that's probably a cool thing to just keep them cooler and see how that goes. And that definitely seemed to work for me. And so I don't really offer any supplemental heat for anything until I start seeing follicular development past or right around the ovulation time. And once that happens, then I'll give them a basking spot of 85 degrees during the day. And then it goes back down to 80 at night, just in the ambient, or 78 to 80. And they don't really seek out the heat that much. And leading up to breeding season, my adults, they're not after the heat. And I've kind of felt like the stuff that I've seen in carpets outside has only just reinforced some of that with me. I know not, necessarily same, but I don't believe that Python reproductive biology is like worlds and worlds apart. And I don't believe that Traciae are some magic different thing than anything else. It's just something we were missing something, or we didn't have the two right animals to put together, or we weren't putting enough of the right animals together, or something like that, but everything that I've experienced has only kind of reinforced that idea with me.
Right. So. Cool. Sorry, Owen, I didn't mean to.
No, you're all good, man. So I was just going to ask, what size group are you working with currently? Because you originally started with your reverse trio. Did you add any more?
Nope.
And that's it?
Nope.
Okay.
Nothing.
And then
nothing has come in. I am very very close colony dude. I really didn't want to work with a big group, because I figure if you can do it with a small group, you could do it with a big group. And I was more interested in figuring out what, and I had noticed early on that one of the males and the female just seemed to really gravitate to each other, almost to the point where you're like, oh, these guys, they like pair bond almost, and I don't know if that's necessarily the case, or if the big male was just the dominant male and he would just cozy up to her because, the other male was like, yeah, I don't want no beef. Like, go ahead, man, go ahead.
Yep.
And, so I don't know. I don't know what that was about necessarily, but Yeah, I lost my train of thought on that question. Go back.
So you didn't add any new ones. You just kept with your reverse tree.
No. Just I literally just have the 3 original animals that I got through Cam, and they are the parents of both clutches. The first clutch was an 8-egg clutch. The second clutch was a 5-egg clutch. I think somebody put me on the spot, and I said there were 14, and I on Reptile Fight Club, and I'm like, there's not 14, there's 13. What the
oh my God, you were off by 1. Holy crap!
You know,
yeah.
I apparently don't do well when I'm on the spot like that. I'm like, 14. Oh, what the? You know, you don't want to look like an idiot.
Where'd that extra one come from?
Yeah, that'd be great, right?
Yeah,
you know, if I could throw extras in there, but. Yeah. So nothing fancy, not doing big groups, not trying to. I really don't have the space to, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, when I started breeding them, that my plan all along was not to let them go. I had seen the Clastolepis thing where people had bred them and then sold them, and I mean they just went out. I know, you know, Stephen Cush has some of those the animals, but I couldn't tell you where any other clutch that was ever produced ever went. So it was like, no, hold on to it. See how it goes. Like, what a rare opportunity to raise up a bunch of, you know, not commonly bred scrubs. Like, yeah, no brainer for me. So, you know, and, you know, once you get, you know, 2 clutches worth of scrubs, you're like, oh crap, this is going to be this is going to be a space problem. Right. So yeah, that's why I just was like, yeah, there's no way I would even, you know, and it's good. Like if I can get these going and other people can get theirs going, you know, we start swapping around genetics and, you know, worked for some biodiversity in these, you know, captive collections, and I'd rather roll it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea better than like being like, cool, price tag, out they go. Like, and then,
This question wasn't in the questions I sent you, but I'm curious, has keeping the species taught you anything as a reptile keeper that, you know, you were surprised, like made you say, wow, okay. Made you a better reptile keeper? Well, obviously, you know, it did, but
yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, it makes you more observant. Like just when you kind of contextualize that idea of like, nobody's doing this any better than you are. And so many people who are, you know, more well-known of a keeper and have had so much more success from you just breeding snakes in general have struck out with this. Like, it's, you know, it's anybody's guess, anybody's game. And, you know, it's the insights that you make right there in your area that, and it's important to understand that it's your room, your conditions, your situation, what's happening there. And, you know, I always try to tell people like, okay, this is what worked for me, but I'm in San Diego, California, where, you know, 70 degrees and sunny is the predominance of our, you know, of our year. We have a marketed wet season that's fairly short, but can be fairly intense. And my good years were wet years. So, you know, I think that's the way most people are, but I don't have a winter or, you know, so I have to rely on that wet period for any barometric, you know, indicators. And it seems but you know, what's weird too, is like the way I've started keeping, I cohabitate most everything. And I don't see locks. I don't see like, I you know, all that breeding that you see when you introduce, it goes away. You don't see it anymore. And I just follow the body condition of the animal as it as I know how it was last year, and I track how it, you know, from last year to this year. Am I seeing the same thing? I am. Okay, I'm still on track, and that's the only way I can kind of tell, you know. So yeah, gotcha. I mean, it's tough. Like you know, there's so much that you learn when you do something like this that, you know, nobody's ever kind of really done before. And you don't know if it's just you totally being full of shit and like over humanizing everything. Like, I saw this and that means this or that means that, and so, having it being the second time and now working on the third, like, don't know. I have some suspicions that I'm onto some things, but I would like to confirm a third, fourth, fifth time before I'm like, yep, that's right. That's what I thought. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
yeah, because you see that with the Bolins, I mean, some guys have success. Like, look at Frederick, right? He knocked it out of the park, and then he hasn't been able to like really recreate that same success.
Yeah.
Well, that was going to be my question, Chuck. How many times have you moved since you bought those snakes?
Never.
Yeah.
They've been in the
I wonder if that's related.
And that's what I'm saying. That's 100% what I'm saying is I have tried to. So
shots fired.
Yeah.
And the craziest part of it is that I bred them twice in those AP cages, and then I built some different cages and I moved them when I gave them the year off. So am I the biggest idiot in history? I guess we'll find out, right? So but I'm watching them and everything so far seems to be tracking just like it was 2 years ago and the year before that. So, if I do strike out, couldn't tell you why, and we'll just keep going with it until, we try to get it back going. But I don't know. I like what I see so far. I guess that's really all I can say about it, But yes, 100%. Like it is about consistency. I mean, again, these animals are trying to make reproductive decisions, and inconsistencies. They don't look at like day to day. They look at month to month, year to year, right? Especially when they have to expend so much capital in reproductive energy. And if they do it in in bad conditions, it can potentially be life threatening for them. So they're very, in my estimation, they're very, very sensitive to changes in environment. And what I'm betting and what I'm hoping is that it's about it that they recognize that they're still in the same snake room, and that they're still under the same environmental conditions, but that they're in a different place, right? I think they're smart enough to figure that kind of stuff out. I give them that much credit. They're still have the same nesting box attached to a different cage. So where they lay and the environmental conditions that they experience are going to be, the same. The walls are still black, but they're wood and they're not plastic, and they have a shelf that's similar but not the same, and they have a different radiant panel size, but they're experiencing the same conditions under that. So things can change in there, but what I'm betting on is that in the grand scheme of things, they still recognize it as same. So that's the hope anyway.
Right.
Cool. All right. I guess I'll go. I mean, one of the things that I geek out about this, and it's kind of like why I love doing the podcast, is like you get to talk to people and sort of pick their brain and their process. So when you first got these, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do? And when you got to where you were going to start breeding them, were you like, that's dumb? Or did you sort of just stick with your original plan?
Yeah. So, I mean, I at first was, scared shitless. I was, I didn't want to kill them. Like I was like, I had basically a long line of bad track record, to look back to and say, oh man, this could go bad. And so, it went from being scared and trying to say like, okay. And I think, that being petrified, started me to say like, okay, one thing at a time. What are my priorities here? And chunking them up into like, get them feel secure. Get them to feel secure, get them to eat. Once they eat, get them, established in eating. Then maybe move them out of, what could potentially be a sub-ideal environment since they're in a dark closet all the time, and go from there, and I think I just kind of continued to work that way. And I started talking to people, and I don't really remember. I remember from the beginning being like, I need to be very hands off with these. That was a very important thing to me. And I don't remember, I'm not the first person to think of it. I know that, but I think I don't think that I talked to anybody and got the idea, but I was like, you know what? Because I had all these, once they went into the AP cages, I had all these cages stacked on top of each other because they have, those dowel pins. You can stack them all on top of each other in there. And I'm like, you know what? Wouldn't it be easier if I just cut a hole in all the cages? So like they go, top to bottom all the way through. And then I'll just put like, a cap, like a slider, put a screw in one corner with a slider that kind of goes over the top of it so I can separate them, because I tried to cohab feed them once, and that was just the biggest mistake. Like, you do that once and you're like,
this is a horrible idea.
Thinking, yeah. So I was like, okay, I have to separate them to feed them. And oh man, and once you kind of think about like, oh, that's so hands off, I can like let them, and then once you do that, then you're like, okay, they can move where they want to. So wait, so now I can watch behaviors happen, year round. I can kind of control what I need to do without really handling them. I need to separate to feed them. And wait until the male and the female are separated, close the pass-throughs, feed them, let them digest. And, and after a while, once I had bred them, I was like, well, I am just going to keep them fairly separate until we start leading up. And then I'm going to introduce them when I want to, but it's all on them. I'll just open it all up and then they can do what they want to do. But I had watched enough of what they were doing to say like, okay, this is how it works with them. This is what they like to do. And they do hang out together. Like when I had it open year round, they totally hang out together. And the two males don't hang out together. Well, no, I'm not even going to say that. The two males will hang out together. They'll hang out in the same cage. Sometimes they hang out together, but most of the time they're separated in different corners of the cage, or one's up in with the female, the other one's not. And I do say that I don't know who the sire is, because I've caught the submissive male, I would say, with the female, while the other male was slipping. You know what I mean? So I think there's a whole kind of bunch of stuff going on there that we just don't key into. And I feel like cutting those pass-throughs was one of those things where I was like, that's a great idea. And I know I didn't come up with that, but once I saw it work, and I was like, dude, you can collect so much data or make so many observations about what's happening that this is gold. Like, this is absolutely gold. And it applies to me. I was like, this would apply to anything that is difficult. Right.
Yeah.
So
I'm cutting those in all my cages. Like, I got the one for the Timors. I'm eyeing up the white lip cages, and I'm like, those need a tunnel. Like, it is. Like,
and
soon.
all of that stuff is perfect.
Yeah.
To do that with, I mean, other than the fact that you're cutting giant holes
in your shit.
In fairly, I mean, it's, it does take a level of commitment to kind of destroy your cage like that. But the benefits, if you like breeding hard to breed stuff, I think is definitely there for that. And yeah. So I forget where we were with the original question, but I go. I'm sorry.
It's fine. Ramble. That's what most of this show is just rambling.
But that was definitely, I think, one of the big things. And I feel like I don't want to talk too much because I don't want to like go off on a tangent without addressing the question. What was that question again?
Did you change up your scheme when you were getting ready to breed and stuff like that. But when you had it, you had original plan and then this. Yeah.
So I didn't, when I was just kind of keeping them before I really got to trying to breed them, I didn't think about cycle feeding them. I didn't regularly feed them, but I occasionally fed them year round, and I didn't really think about food input for reproductive cycle. That wasn't really on my mind. And that really came from Justin and Terry and even Ryan. That was one of those where it's like, okay, yeah, that's probably a good idea. There's just, let's see, what else is there? Was there really any, I think those were really kind of the big ones that I did that I felt like, came from, just a change where you're like, okay, I don't want to mess with these, but how do I get them to do what I need them to do without messing? Oh yeah. Cut the pass-throughs. Okay. And then, you start talking to people and you're like, okay, well, these things are like years and years old. They're plenty big enough to breed. I mean, what do you think? Like, what what should I do? What do you think's you think cycle feeding is important? Like, and it's that age old debate, right? Like we all have that debate. Like, does it matter? And there's plenty of people who do it without cycle feeding. And there's plenty of people who do it, who absolutely insist that it's important. So, again, is that one of the tickets? I don't know. But I feel like, and, I feel like the more you can leverage ideas that make it more likely that you will be successful, the better off you'll be. Right. So even if cycle feeding is not important, doing it and cueing that is only going to increase your success, and, cutting those pass-throughs and letting them move on their schedule only going to increase the chance that you don't miss that opportunity, because they certainly know better than we do. A nest box, making them feel secure, that is only going to help you increase the chance that you're having success. So it's like finding all those things that make you, increase the chance of you having success was kind of where by the time I was ready to breed them, that's where my head was at. And that's where I've moved forward. And that's where I'll always stay now is, I have no idea. And I don't think most people have any idea what to do. So it's just doing all those things you can possibly think of and talking to all those really smart people who could put an idea in your head or give you, an idea that they've had to help make you more successful. And I think that's, bottom line, like none of us got here by ourselves. And a lot of people could be like, don't do that. That doesn't work. Right. And I feel like that keep them warm, keep them humid. Like we did that. It doesn't work. It's not good. Yeah. Right. So, there was definitely stuff that I didn't even have to consult people for that. I was just kind of like,
that didn't work.
That,
next.
Right? Yeah. That doesn't work. Right.
Right. So it's not a question of mimicking Halmahera. It's a question of being an excellent snake keeper who's responsive to what you're seeing in your animals and giving them the opportunity to do what they want, theoretically want to do anyway. Right. You're facilitating their choices.
100%. And I think Justin and I kind of talked about this a little bit, but if you look at the original Barker species description, it just basically says they're found throughout the Halmahera Islands, right?
Right.
But there's elevation on that island. I think it goes up to like 5,000 feet or something. So the climate at sea level versus the climate at elevation can be markedly different. If you've ever camped in the mountains, you're like, gosh, dang, it's cold up here, right? You get up, you're like, I did not bring the right sleeping bag.
Right. Yeah.
So, elevation can play a huge role, where where these animals are at, if that is truly true, then by that rationale, these animals have to be able to reproduce under a variety of conditions, because some of them are up on the mountain, some of them are down at sea level, right? So it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense that they have to exist in this, very finite, temperature, climate regime, like that sucks. That's how the dodo bird, would roll.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a very successful reproductive strategy if you have to have, X, Y, and Z condition all the time. They have to be able to adapt, but at the same time, it has to be consistent enough that they make those good choices, and are able to do it. So, and that's kind of where I was like, yeah, throw it out the window. Let's see what, we did hot and wet. Let's see what dry and cooler does. And I'm not gonna, I'll probably never give any of my pythons much above 85 degrees. I just won't.
I know.
I have not seen when we were over in Darwin. It's like if you had looked it up and like I'm going to keep my snakes like it says for the temperature in Darwin year round. It's like 110 degrees. That's not where you found the damn thing.
Right,
you found it in a gully where it was 70 degrees.
They don't want to be in 110 degrees. And those diamond pythons who will come out and warm up and get up to 110, they're there for like 15 minutes and then they're back hiding. Yeah, and they're back down to that preferred body temperature, and then they ride that wave out until they can get the sun again. So it's I mean, you have to think about the adaptive, advantages that the animal that you're talking about, right? So the idea that these things would have to be kept warm all the time, like that sucks. Like that's not how it works, right?
It's impossible.
Yeah. And deserts get super, Bradley, like they get super hot, but it gets super cold in the desert too. So that's why, that's a tough snake, because it has to be able to exist in both ends of the spectrum. So, it's just one of those things where you have to kind of like, okay, what's going on here? What else other than what the weather report in Halmahera says could be going on here, right?
Right. Did they breed at is it normal python window breeding time?
Yeah. So
fall cool down, stuff like that.
Yep. I do a fall cool down, cut off food generally around, November, December, January, depending upon what the weather's doing here. And I let them just clean out. And right, generally like around, Valentine's Day, February 14th, that's when I start kind of like I have a good indication. And then all the clutches had been laid in the middle of June. I mean, like literally almost days apart in the middle of June.
Gotcha.
So, and then, they're roughly a long incubation period. So,
right. Okay. Did they have cute, like, are you seeing the males cruise around the cage? And does that like,
yeah, I mean, they go, I go from feeding to not feeding. And you can see them kind of make that change between always being hungry and always like, okay, I got to eat to, all right, let's breed, and they become uninterested in food, and then they start seeking each other out. And that's when you start to see like, all right, the males with the female, the other males excluded. And you start to see them, and it's fun because you check the cage and you'll be like, all right, this is the snapshot today, and then it'll be different. So a lot of times, I know when I'm getting a weather event rolling in, I will only see one snake, and it will be a male, because the other two are gone somewhere. And so I take that like, cool, good. That's exactly, I want to see that. Like, but like I said, I never see, when I was when I first started breeding them, I was doing the introducing, right? Where I would put one in the other's cage before I started doing the pass-through stuff. Right. And I was like, this is dumb, but I would see copulations then. I don't, like I said, I don't see it. Once I cut the pass-throughs and they were allowed to do what they want, I didn't see that anymore. I never see it anymore. So, I mean, it's, I think it's a pretty typical Python breeding season for them.
Gotcha.
Chuck, was there a year
like
between those two clutches, or was it?
Yes. Well,
was it a gap? Yeah, was there a gap, or was it consecutive
between the
years?
first clutch and the second clutch? It was consecutive years.
Really?
So
Wow.
it was So it was the first year, which would have been what, 2019?
I think so.
Yeah, 2019, and then 2020, 2021 off, now into 2022.
Okay.
So the first year was an 8-egg clutch. The second year was a 5-egg clutch. 100% fertility on both clutches, and then I gave them a year off, and then we're going to try them again this year. So last year was off, but the 2 consecutive years, or the 2 preceding years, were breeding years. So not big clutches, just big eggs.
Sure. That's just so fascinating. She was able to turn it around from mid-June to going back into it. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I gave her probably almost 2 months before I really started feeding her again too. So I just let her, and she really wasn't super interested in food after she laid. But right back on it, like really, and she wasn't huge either. So it's, I hit her decently with food. I packed, but that, again, that's when I was cycle feeding too. So like there was a portion of the year where she went, breeding again without food. And she was pretty skinny by the end of that second clutch. And I was like, okay, we're going to take this one off. We're going to let her build back up, build, her calcium reserves, build everything, her body condition back up. And she looks phenomenal right now. Just perfect. It's perfect. So, super happy with the way it went. I would have liked to have seen a little bit bigger clutch the second time, but I totally understand why I didn't,
Right.
And I was like, we did it once, we got to try it again, like
100%. Did you just, you moved them out of those cages during the gap year, or did you not open the pass-throughs?
Yeah, or? the gap year. Yeah. I totally put them. So I sequestered them for the year off, and then built the other cages during that year, and then moved. I moved the female in, then I moved the big male, the dominant male into the other cage. So I just have 2 big cages. They're 5 by 24 by 24 with an offset elevated nesting box that they can kind of pass through. And then the pass-throughs are cut between the 2 cages. And then I had the other male, the submissive male, in one of the AP cages. And when I started to get ready to breed them, I just put them all in those 2 cages, opened the pass-throughs, and just let them go. So
no type of combat or anything between
nothing,
the males, right?
No, not at all. They don't do that.
Right.
They don't do that. To the point where I was like, are these males?
Yeah.
Like everything I'd ever heard was that they'll kill each other. Are these males really? Like, so
you have to assume that was just guessing. That was just sort of a presumption that, again, how do people get in trouble? Presuming stuff, not actually trying it out and see how it go.
Absolutely. So,
or somebody somewhere's their animal died, and they're like, he must have killed the other one, and then that was it. So,
yeah. And so, it was, and it's funny because, when I started talking about using 2 males, that's when it kind of came out of like, what? I thought they kill each other. What? Blah, blah, blah. And, it's just funny because there was a lot of people who would run around and said that for a long time, and it's totally not the case. It's totally not the case. So
yeah, they are not killing each other. So yeah, clearly something somewhere is wrong. So
this is why we always say, like, the thing I always say is like, it's good to have this idea of what to do, but like, you sort of have to then look at your snakes and watch what they're doing. Similar to what Rob said earlier, like, it's like, okay, well, I don't really give 2 shits what you're telling me on the internet. I'm telling you what's happening in front of my face,
right?
And
What I can see,
and,
well, and like when I did the inlands,
I was going to bring that up.
Somebody forgot to tell me that they were spring breeders. Like, I didn't know. Who knew?
That was great.
Yeah, I mean, and the other conventional wisdom was that they had to be bred, later, 4 or 5 years, and mine went at 3. So it was just like, it just takes.
Chuck's the rule breaker. He's like, I'm breaking all the rules.
Just try it for yourself. It's your risk. It's your animals, and if you can do it safely. Like, don't listen to everybody else. Like, don't let them tell you how it is, because what you'll find out is that the animals will tell you, like, nope, they're full of crap.
Right. So once the female, I guess my next question would be, once the female is sort of like she's progressing along, was there any behaviors that she did that stood out to you?
So, you can kind of tell when she's developing follicles and getting ready to go, because they get really dark. It's like a hormonal color change where they just get super iridescent but really dark. And then once they get through that, I call it kind of, they glow before they go. They get really bright, and then you can kind of like, okay, they ovulated. I'm pretty sure. I don't know exactly when it happened, but that's what that is. Okay. I noticed that. And then, their basking behavior is funny because, like, so in the cage, the nesting box is elevated, and it's kind of right at the same height as it's like, the way I did it is just modeled after the AP shelves that they have in the back. And so, she can kind of come out and like basically put her body right on the shelf from the hole of the nesting box. And then right basically under that is the radiant panel. So, she experiences a little bit warmer of a temperature associated to the nesting box, but then can also get to that 85 degrees however she wants. And she'll just come out and put like the first third of her body under that heat. She will never, she does not put the last half or any of the eggs underneath that heat. She just warms herself up and keeps the rest of that very cool. Wow. That's one of the things I've definitely, and it's like consistent, like daily you can catch her doing that. That's
cool. Yeah, like to be the difference from like a normal carpet, like invert belly, get that heat onto those babies kind of a thing. That's cool.
Yeah, she definitely isn't trying to direct heat, any of those eggs when they're in her at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And there's no light in the cages, right? So we're strictly talking the heat panel rather than having any sort of bulb fixture, any sort of LEDs or anything.
So I went ahead in the new cages and I put a 24-inch phosphorescent fixture, so to offer kind of some UV. And it's off, it's off to the other side of the cage. And it's funny because when they'll bask, sometimes they'll be under the radiant panel, but then when they're not, they're on the other side by the UV light. And I'm like, is that because they just they like to be elevated, but they don't want to be under the heat? Or are they like really searching out that UV? And, with the whole falderall around like how important UV is for snakes, like I don't want to sit there and be like, no, my animal totally goes after that UV, totally does. And, but I also question, like, why are they so iridescent? Like, what is the function of iridescence in these snakes? And you look at solar collectors and they're, very iridescent, or you look at solar reflectors and they're highly iridescent. So is that to shield them from some of the solar insolation that they may receive out in the wild, or is that to help them, receive some of that? I don't, I'm not a smart man when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Are there lights and panels in both cages? So when you have the pass-through open? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So identical setups in both cages, both elevated hides, radiant panel right there, right next to the elevated hide, and then off to the other side of the last probably 2 feet is a 24-inch phosphorescent. So yeah.
But in theory, there is still a
That's it.
UV range, so they could be on the ground in the middle of the cage, and they'd be away from both options, and they're
Everything,
choosing
100%.
this other option. Okay.
Yep.
Pre-lace shed, all that kind of stuff, just typical
Yeah.
Python
Yeah.
stuff.
You said the incubation was longer.
Mhm.
What were we looking at for that?
So scrub incubations are roughly 90 to 100 days. So they're way longer than, the 60 days that we're kind of carpet used to. Yeah. And so, I don't, I don't subscribe to higher incubation temperatures. I incubated both of my clutches at about 85 degrees. So that's generally on the lower end for what I think most people, when I learned, I thought, oh, that's too low. You get, you could kill them that way, or they come out all funny or whatever. And I don't think that. And part of the reason I think that scrubs should be incubated at lower temperatures is because they have such a longer incubation period. You don't want to cook hot and fast for something that's going to be in the egg a real long time. And I don't know how that works with monitors. I don't really know what incubation temperatures for monitors are, but they tend to have pretty long incubation times. So
pretty similar to what you're doing there, Chuck. Yeah. Pretty similar to that.
That's kind of what I figured. And I know Marcel Hawkins was talking to a guy who kind of had done Clastolepis in Europe and had repeated success. And he was kind of suggesting, that 87, something that's a little more typical for what you would see for like carpets or, but I kind of advised a lower temperature. I think it's a little safer for a long haul with scrubs. But certainly, obviously there's an example of a guy who's had repeated success with Clastolepis and he incubates at a higher temperature. So I will say that I think I had heard that he had lost, he lost some eggs on the way. I did not lose any eggs, 100% hatch rate on both clutches. So, yeah.
I was actually thinking about it, knocking mine, because this will be my third year for all of Pythons, and I have lost an egg or two, and then I usually have at least one baby that goes the distance, hatches, and just is not okay and just crashes. So I've been actually thinking about knocking down the temp for the olive eggs. It's just that they keep coming around the time when the incubator's packed full of carpet eggs, and it's
that's the tough.
I only have one incubator.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
And I potentially have some carpet clutches this year. And so now the question is like, does everybody get 85?
That's the other thing. It's like,
I think we'll see.
I know for a fact you can incubate carpet eggs at 80 degrees.
Just going to say,
because my dumbass did not plug in the incubator when I got a late clutch. I'm just like, here you go. And then I'm like, these things have not hatched. And then I'm like, wait, oh shit. So it just takes longer.
But again, it goes back to the idea that these animals have to have some plasticity in conditions, or they just wouldn't make it the millions of years that they have, right?
It took longer to get them going, but that was the only problem that I had. Whatever. Yeah.
Hey, man. And it's cool that you actually did that by mistake, because
yes, I will go down in history of,
no, what I'm saying is like a lot of times those mistakes sort of, like push you out of that that rigid idea that they have to be X.
My one mention in the next complete carpet python book will be this dumbass who taught us that we don't need to plug in our incubators. Thank you, dumbass. Yeah. So my only mention.
How did you know? That's the section I
knew it's the next chapter.
Yeah. Proofread it for Justin.
Picture of me like this. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
No.
Some of the best insights come from some of the worst mistakes.
Yeah, man.
Horrible mistakes. Yeah. So as far as like incubating then babies, like how did you set up the neos right when they got out?
Let them just be all together till they were out of the egg. Mine were.
Wait, hold on. I have to stop here for a sec.
Yeah.
What was it like when that
first that happened?
Pipped out of the egg.
Dude, I couldn't believe, so first of all, getting the eggs is one where you're just
right.
Like, oh my God.
Right.
And then then the realization of like, oh my God, I got to do this for 90 days. Like I'm going to be a mess. Like, and so, you're checking on it like, okay, still the same. Nothing's dead. Oh my God, we're good. Okay. And after a while, and then after you get like 4 weeks in of that, you're just kind of like, okay, well, I'm just going to leave these alone, pop the top, circulate the air every once in a little while and we'll rock. Once those things pipped, I was just like, hell yeah, dude. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah. And
that's awesome.
Just to see how they turned out. And it was just like, man, it met every expectation that I had for sure.
Nice. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, totally understandable. Totally understandable.
Dude, he probably did that double take thing that I do where I'm like, open the door, and I've done this a million times. Eggs are still there. Close. Wait, open the door, flip it up, little face. Like, yeah, and then you're like, then you just freak out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for sure. For sure. But it is, I mean, it's very surreal. And, I don't consider myself like anybody special or like that's not how I think of myself. So to be like, oh my God, I did it. Like it happened, it's just a weird thing for me, like I didn't, if you would have told me when I got those, that's where I would have ended up, like I wouldn't have bought it. I wouldn't have bought it.
Cool.
Very cool. Okay. So what did they look like?
Yeah.
So they look just like the adults. They don't come out red. They're dark. They're dark. So like how Tracy will get dark before they shed. They look like that. Mm-hmm. They look like unshed Tracy. And oh, by the way, they shed pretty soon after they come out, and then they look just like normal Tracy. So they're one of those scrubs that they look exactly like the adult coloration, which is super interesting. I guarantee there's some type of predation reason for that. Why they would look no different. So yeah, I mean, just absolutely like little mini adults. So
that's so fantastic, Chuck. I'm going to cut off Eric for a second, and then he can tell you, kind of relay the story from his perspective. But I had gotten from Cam in 2004 a couple little. They must have been 10 inches. They fit under a 4-inch terracotta saucer. The bottom of the pop that they fit underneath those. And they were exactly the coloration you're describing. And so I, from there forward, told people, there's no way these things are born red. You couldn't, there's no way these snakes that I'm sitting on, these have to be, sub a month for sure, but probably more like just hatched out, that what I had. Yeah. And
totally.
So when OKC had theirs hatch out, we were in Brisbane. We were in Australia when we saw the stuff come through that they had hatched out. And Eric, now you can pick up the story. What happened in our little Airbnb when we saw that post?
We were waiting for Scott to come pick us up to take us coastal carpet hunting. Anyway, I was about to eat some Vegemite and toast in our little Airbnb.
God, that is horrible.
For the first time. And all I hear is Rob saying, I knew it.
Heck yeah.
Screw you, people.
Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, I think Rob got a lot of shit for that for years, saying that he was crazy. So I understand.
Right, because I mean, it does make him an outlier for sure, and I recognize that. But at the same time, I was sitting there going, "Yeah, I had some that were the size of newborn carpet python, a large newborn carpet python," and it's like,
and they're fairly big babies when they're born. So I mean, like what you're talking about sounds very close to out of the egg, like not.
And they shed right away. So
not months and months in. Yeah, right. And I wonder, and I just wonder if the stuff that's, because there have been several people, you being one, and I forget who else was. Maybe it was.
I know Dave Barker got some that he thought must have been older than he thought because they weren't red. So I found this out retroactively when they were putting together the book, and I had sent him some pictures of what I had, and he was like, "No, I don't think those are young enough." Essentially, he was doubting his own intuition at looking at the animal and what it would hatch out like, because I think maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years earlier from that, so we're talking the late 90s, they had a similar. They got 4 or 5 of them that were probably the same size and the same age. And I will point out, right, that this is the same time frame that. So in Dan Natusch's paper, he talks about the farm hatching Tracier because he was looking at Tracier eggs. Yeah. The weird bit is they were not marketed as having been captive. There wasn't presentation of that type. And I asked Vladimir about it, and I was like, "Hey, did you read the?" He's from Kyrgyzstan, and so we had bonded over that, and there was the whole thing was super interesting and weird, and I've never I don't know what to make of the whole thing with Daniel's paper and measuring those eggs, and if that was right or not, and if then the eggs he measured were the babies that I received or what. But yeah, the whole thing has been super interesting to me.
Yeah, and clearly, there have been animals that have come in that are so small that one would say that, maybe they've been, farm hatched, and we're just not hearing about it. They're not, right. It's not, to us, it's like some monumental accomplishment. To them, they're like, yeah, whatever,
These things come in all the time and drop eggs. It's fine, yeah. So
I don't know.
I don't think we're quite there, Owen. I was laughing, here as Chuck was talking about, other people and all these things, and I was like, well, Chuck, as far as I know, it's at least in private hands, it's basically you. So and then OKC and maybe the European thing or not or whatever. You have better insight to that, but yeah, I don't think you're one of many.
And I mean, Shane's done. Shane's
Shane stuff. How could I forget about Shane? I feel bad.
I know. I
feel terrible. Yeah, Shane stuff. Yeah, and what a great dude. Shane's so great.
Oh, for sure. And I guess I was a little surprised that I had heard that the guy over in Europe had sold all of the ones that he had hatched. So I was just kind of like, damn.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just. Sorry, I got dogs.
No worries.
Yeah, we all have them.
So there. Yeah, but yours aren't screwing up your
because nobody's knocking on the door right now. That's why. You ring those bell, those dachshunds will go forever.
Yeah. So what is the temperament like for the
babies?
The babies, yeah.
They're super chill when they come out. Like I was like, really? I thought like, that captive bred Tracier are like they're super calm and they're like, and now they act just like regular scrubs. Like they'll bite the shit out of you, and like they're they got that same kind of nervous titch to them. Not quite as bad, but still like they're. If you get them out to clean and you set them on a perch, they're like missile seeking you. You know what I mean? They're looking for their moving target, and they'll lunge at you. But man, when they first hatch, and this was both clutches, they were just chill as chill could be. Wouldn't start anything, not bitey at all. Some of them ate like right out of the egg almost. That's like nuts. No shed. Some of them waited till they shed. Some of them were like, I'm not eating. I had to assist feed 2 of them from the first clutch, and they it's like a typical clutch. Like some of them are amazing, just come out. Some of them are and some of them just are like, I don't care if I die, I'm never gonna eat. And you get them going, and you're like, did I do the right thing? But I mean, when you hatch out Tracier, it's so rare that you're like, you ain't gonna fucking die.
You're gonna eat this. Is not an option. Yeah. Like it is it.
We've got this far. God damn it!
No. Oh hell no!
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So
what are they eating? Hoppers?
Yeah. Yep.
Frozen thawed or live, or what did you have to do there?
So first clutch, I had a hard time with frozen thawed. I had to start them all pretty much live, and then they transitioned fairly easy after I got them doing live a couple times. But the second clutch took frozen thawed, like the ones that ate right away. They ate right away and didn't, no muss, no fuss. Like
that's awesome.
Absolutely striking off tongs, So I was like, cool, that was nice. So yeah.
What about as far as oh shit, I totally lost my train of thought.
I do that too.
The setups. How are you doing the set? Because you mentioned them not having a lot of heat and all that. So how are you setting up the babies?
Yeah. So not newspaper, but paper towels, water dish, and then I have like I think it's an AP cage, but I think what's a shoebox? Is an 8-quart? So these are
6-quart.
6,
okay,
5
so
or 6,
these are probably 16-quart, so they're a little bit bigger, and they have like kind of like ridges on the end. So I just cut a piece of it's probably 3/8 like PEX tubing that you can get at Home Depot, and I just kind of set it. I just kind of set it in those. It kind of locks into those 2 corners, and that's all I do. Just simple, easy, like nothing fancy. Keep it clean. Kind of the sterile approach. I've had a hard enough time with substrates that I don't ever find a substrate that I really, really like unless it's like in a planted bioactive enclosure or with adults. I just seem to have had like issues with substrates with young animals. So I just steer away from it in general and just keep them sterile and especially, high value rare stuff like, hey man, we're not risking shit right now.
I was going to ask you if they eat off the tongs or are they like you have to leave it on the bottom.
Yeah, no, they'll eat. I mean, they'll murder. Now they're murdering stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, at first, warm them up, dangle them. Sometimes you gotta poke at them a little bit to get them to be like, okay, fine, I'll eat. But now they're smashing stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So there's the whole stigma around throwing multiple males in a cage. Was there some kind of apprehension to that? And also, do you think that is something that is definitely helpful in one of the driving forces? Is that something that maybe we should consider as something like cycle feeding and temperature stuff and daylight? Is that something else that they might need?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I think all things are on the table when you're trying to do something,
right?
And I definitely felt like, I mean, what am I gonna lose by putting them in there? And like I said, I was like, are these 2 males? Like, I mean, it had me confused, right? And I'm like, no, they aren't. I know they are. They are 2 males, yeah, And so, I think the insight came on the back end, but I mean, I definitely think that, if reproductive competition is a thing, right? I mean, any dude knows this. Like, we can all sit here and nod, be like, yep. So, if there's another male who is biting for, that reproductive event, I think it does nothing but spur on, some action or the impetus if the one of the males was by himself and he said, I got nothing, this is all me, this is all mine, and I don't think in the end that you could say like, oh, it's absolutely critical or necessary, but again, it's one of those things that's only going to increase the chance of success. And if you had a male who maybe wasn't fully into it, another male who's like, I'll screw your girl, dog. That may get him motivated enough to do the deed.
A little bit of competition there. So
I think there's a lot of focus in the hobby to have 1.2.
Yeah.
2.1, you know what I mean? Or 2.2, I guess would be the ideal, but
sure. That, in my opinion, 2.2. If you're gonna really give it a swing, 2.2. Anything else is.
Oh, and if you're going to give it a swing, you get 6.4. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's if you're trying to hit the home
run. Yeah, I know. 2.2, because then, I mean, how many times have we been in, all of us here collectively, been in the situation where it's like, this is my 1.1, sex it.
Damn it.
Never mind. This is my 2.0. Like it's, and that kind of stuff where like, or you have a boy that's lazy as shit and doesn't feel like doing anything. So you got to spur him on. So, yeah, and I have heard that other types of scrubs have also been produced with multiple males, or that they need that kind of competition or drive a little bit.
Well, and we're not always the best at sharing what we feel are our, magical secrets to success, which is unfortunate because, God damn it, it's not like you figured something out that, is some like. You're never gonna patent it and make $1 billion. So
they
just
do it on their own.
Share it, and we can all get on to making stuff together that helps everybody. Like I mean, if I just tried to keep all the secrets to doing stuff to myself, and I'm the only one producing something that nobody else is producing, it's not a very effective strategy, right? It's not for the longevity of something that we want to establish, right? So it doesn't make sense. So it's like, and especially with hard to breed stuff, right? So help people out, man. It's like you may feel like you're winning, but in the reality of things, we're all losing. It's gonna, it doesn't help us. So yeah, sorry.
I mean, you're right with it. It's like, and I think things have gotten a little bit better about that mentality, but I still think it hangs in there with a lot of stuff.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, and unfortunately we snakes in boxes seems to be a very competitive thing. So it's like, all right. I mean,
okay.
So yeah, unfortunately it's how it rolls.
Well, you've made $1 million bucks not selling those offspring, right, Chuck?
I mean, and like honestly, when I do end up selling them, I'm not going to sell them for a lot of money. They're just going to go to the right people that I feel like it will be ensured that, I mean, people were like, oh, are you going to trade those for this or that? And I thought about it for a while, and I was kind of like, there's some stuff that I wouldn't mind getting my hands on to trade for that. But then in the end, I'm like, but what am I like for the long-term success of what I started out with? Is that the right way to do it? Like, no, let somebody else who has that thing buy those or trade for those and let them figure that out. This will be my thing. And I'll work with other people to do my thing so that we can all ensure that we get it done together. And the monetary part of this is less important, but ensuring the longevity of the project. And I felt like holding those clutches back until I knew that things were safe and things were secure, and that, and I'm not saying that other people can't do this. I just know that I'm doing okay with it, and my adults are living long time, and my babies seem to be doing well, and that's all I know. And so I feel safe that way, but past that I'm scared, and I don't want to send those out and have bad outcomes, because for whatever reason, whatever happens, you
and Shane sending each other a box is a lot more important than any other thing that can happen.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I know somebody who had, a bad incident around something pretty rare, and now he's kind of stuck, and I feel horrible for him, but it's like, it wasn't his fault. But it just reinforced my whole thing of like, okay, I'm not moving these out anywhere. I'm not, I'm holding on to them because I don't lose by doing that right now.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the problem with those rare and I don't know, you guys can comment on this after I say this, but like, I think, and me and Rob have talked about this before, but those rare species, you typically have a higher price tag, which I feel that sometimes keeps it out of the hands of people that could do the species justice, because they can't afford, obviously Bolin's is an example. It's 10 grand for a snake. Like, how can you have a group of them? How are you going to have two males? I mean, it's just damn near impossible. And I think that it sort of, I don't know, it doesn't give the species in captivity the best trajectory for success, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
It limits what you can do, because I mean, you can't really, like what Chuck was saying, with like everything's on the table. If the animals are priced like you said, bull and I, not all the options are there or feasible unless you have a crap ton of money, in which case, what are you doing trying to breed Boelen's pythons? So I don't.
Well, and when you get animals that are 10 grand a piece, it's about selling expensive animals. It's not about breeding Boelen's pythons, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, I'm not spending 10 grand on Bull and I at all for that. Like, do I think I could breed them? Yeah, I think so. I think I got as good a shot as anybody. But it's just not. It's not. I'm not going to play that game, and that sucks. That sucks because I feel like, and there's a lot of people who would be in my exact same situation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I got a family and like a mortgage and kids that are teenagers now, and like I can't spend that kind of money on a set of snakes with no guarantee that I'm going to have a good outcome.
Yeah.
And these are live animals, like all of that, and oh, by the way, are they even captive bred? No, they're probably wild caught, that have been sold off as farmed hatch or whatever bullshit they're pulling on people these days.
Yeah.
So it's a giant money scheme that and we're so about
No, you're great, Chuck. You're great, because here's the other thing.
So about
those have never been inexpensive. What's the difference between Bull and I and Tracy I? Right? It's that Bull and I have never been cheap. They've been expensive from the 70s. They've always been a highly valued thing. That's never been about like, oh, okay, you could actually have a group and try and make it work if you applied the technique. Not multiple males, but the entirety of what you're doing. Staying in the same space, responding to the snakes, all this stuff. Bull and I have never, ever, ever been in that position. And that's where they are in captivity.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. 100%. And I mean, we talked about this on Reptile Fight Club. Casey Cannon came on and he was like, well, at what cost, was it to breed Tracy? Was it thousands of animals that had to die for that? And it's like, well, it's whatever it was. And so,
right. I mean, those were shipped in. It wasn't a question of us buying them or not buying them. They were being exported from Halmahera in the years where they weren't having civil unrest, right? So they could ship out from the country,
Yeah, whether they were going to die in the shipping box or whether they were going to die in somebody's cage, like the outcomes back then weren't good either way, and they were going to get exported, right?
Right.
Where on the benefit side of Bull and I, maybe less have been shipped due to the cost. And so maybe there's a net positive there.
That's only recently, though. They were sending that it became illegal to send non-hatchling Bull and I. In the late 90s. Before that, it was totally fine, and people would get these 6-footers that did, guess what, terribly. And they still have problems with babies. But
who knew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So, and it's just, it's sad. And, it's, I mean, I get it. And, if you kind of know the history of exotic animals and where all that comes from, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, I see. I get it. I understand where the profit over, the profit over, animal welfare kind of comes into play on this. And it's unfortunate and it sucks. And it's kind of incumbent upon, people to kind of take up that mantle and do that. And hey, man, like but that $10,000 a snake thing, that's stupid. Like, it's just crazy. Like it takes it so far past one person being able to even get a pair and try the long shot, and figure it out, and it's just like, in that sense, it's just injustice. It's just injustice for the animal. It's injustice for keepers or people who care about, any sense of conservation of these animals. I mean, so.
Well, it just keeps going because we haven't been able to figure out or establish a captive breeding. We just keep bringing in the babies from the wild. So that cycle just keeps going. It's like you're talking about with Casey saying that, like, what was the cost of the animals? It's like, we get that. And yeah, for a while we were hitting our head against the heat and humidity is what's needed. And, you know, I want to say that a lot of animals did kind of get involved, swept up in that. But with the eventuality and the hope of that with yours and Shane's and Blake's and other stuff like that, that there will be some kind of knit together captive breeding situation where we won't really need to bring over Tracy anymore. Maybe a few to keep things diverse, but you know, we wouldn't do that. And
that's sort of my other. Oh, go ahead.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, and that's something that I'm not sure if we'll ever get to with Bull and I, because when will you get to that point where you don't
they've
need
never
to bring
been
over
there.
Baby Bull
They've
and I?
never been there precisely because
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Chuck, I love Reptile Fight Club. You know, I love Dr. J and his Sweet Lady DDP, and your take is always good.
We
even
don't
though
talk of Sweet Lady DDP.
He's always cheating you out of the coin toss and all this stuff. I love it. I heard that episode.
Yeah, what's up with you?
You should ask for reduce.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel the same.
I think, you know,
You
I
see,
did listen.
best 2 out of 3, I whoop his ass.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's weird how that works out.
Man, I'm not a one-time guy, you know.
100%.
Got to give me best 2 out of 3.
Yep.
I did hear that one with Casey. I thought it was really good. But I would object, right, and say we're just talking about commercialization of wildlife. That has nothing to do with, you know, we shouldn't. It's not fair to be saying, oh, we as people who've kept Tracy, which is everyone weirdly except Owen in this chat right now, that you know, somehow that's my fault, whatever happened or didn't happen, or I bear some responsibility for that. No, I refuse to accept that point of view. And, you know, I don't take that negativity in my life. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I think the mass importation at cheap prices has a cost. Yep. I think the sparse importation at high prices has another kind of cost, because the people who are getting these animals,
100%,
their motivations are not always
altruistic, right? Weirdly, that's the case.
Yeah, 100%, right. And so, you know, and I get it. People are people, like, and you know, we're just people who are interested in animals, but a Ferrari is a Ferrari, and people interested in a Ferrari because it's a Ferrari, in the same way that humans who are into snakes are interested in Bull and I because it's a Ferrari. Right? Yeah. So, you know, and they're expensive and they're rare, and ooh, look what I got. You know what I mean? Reptile chicks will dig me. I don't know what
their motivation is.
Yeah, I can't relate. I got fussy brown, you know, scrub pythons. Like, nobody cares.
I want all the ugly, mean things. That's all I keep getting. Yeah.
and you know, to be honest, like, I kind of like the fact that they're a brown scrub. Like, they're the most uninteresting looking of the scrub pythons. To me, that's like the best thing about them is so few people will care that I could actually probably put together a collective to get this going. Where, you know, for Bull and I, you're never gonna get enough people to be able to want to work together to get that shit off the ground.
Right.
And so, you know, you got to have people who are in it for the game and in it for the animal, not in it for the likes or the, you know, the flashiness or the whatever, you know, and you know, I mean, I guess, you know, maybe some of that's unfair. Maybe some of that's just painting with a broad brush, but I definitely feel like some of that is on point, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. Chuck,
I also worry about, like.
So
Good, Rob.
Yeah. So since they've been produced by OKC, by yourself, by Shane, in Europe, have you seen a loss of interest in them? This was a theoretical question that we were asking a decade ago. Right, because of exactly what you're describing. I love this species. You know, I've had a whole ton of them. I find them fascinating. You find them fascinating. Everyone here finds them fascinating. But as soon as they lost the mystique of, quote, the one python that hasn't been bred in captivity, have you noticed that people care less than they cared before?
I mean, Look, I am not the person who has their finger on the pulse of all things Scrub Python. But certainly I am left with the feeling that they were a thing to be conquered. And once they were conquered, people were like, well, no challenge there anymore. Somebody did it. I can't put my name on the front of that. And you know, it's like, well, I couldn't put my name on the front of it either, but OKC did. And fucking hell yeah for them, man. Good. Hey, Blake, what did you guys do? Like, you know, what, like, and if I'm able to have success, then anybody's able to have success. And Shane had success. And now I want to see, you know, other people have success. And that's how, and then I want to put together a stud book. I want to put together a group, and I want to start trading genetics. And I want people to focus on, you know, those the Tracier, you know. I think that people get so wrapped up in well, I did this and I got this and that's under my belt, and now I'm going to go do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this, and that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works with hard to breed stuff. Is the minute you set it down, the next person who picks it up, you know, unless and you know, who knows? We haven't even had enough captive bred animals reproduced of Tracier to see if that this is how it is. But I suspect that once you set these down, it's not easy to pick them right back up and to just breed any old person to breed them. You know, I think that longevity and that like hanging in the game thing, you know, it's incumbent upon us. And especially because Casey is right. There is a cost. There was thousands of animals that died on the way for us to get here. And so, you know, if you really do give a shit, then you stick with it for that reason, because a lot of suffering and a lot of death had to happen in order for us to get here. And oh, by the way, if we could stop importing and stop having to do that, you know, we can start to control the prices of Bolani and you know, God forbid we all get together and some of the unscrupulousness of it all starts to fade away. And we have success at levels where, hey man, maybe they're, you know, a couple $1,000 an animal and not $10,000 an animal. Right. You know, like I have no issue with that. I think higher priced animals lead to better outcomes at a certain level. Like once it goes to a ridiculous level, then it's just not good for anybody.
Right.
I got to say, man, the happiest I've been in the snake, you know, breeding hobby in the past 10 years has been as of recent, where I don't really give a shit about the morph game. I work with the species I love. I don't have to have everything just because I think that it ticks a box, to your point. I do sell snakes from time to time, you know, for people that I don't know or somebody that's hitting me up and it's looking for something. But I got to tell you, I get the more satisfaction out of sending somebody a snake that fits into the project that they're trying to do, that ultimately is pushing the species ahead, whether it's a carpet, a scrub, a Antaresia, a rough scale, a Kimberly rock monitor. It doesn't matter. It's
giving away roughies? I'm sorry. No.
Not yet.
Oh, okay. I'm about to say, if that was not the first call, I will be insulted.
Like, you know, I mean, me and Ove have been doing it for years. Me and Rob have done it. You know, I've done it with Riley and Lucas and all those guys. And me and Justin have done it to where I still got his gelatin sitting here growing up. But it's just too damn cold to ship, man.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It makes me feel like, I guess maybe it's a little bit, it makes me feel like when I was younger, you know, in the 80s and in the early 90s, to where that's kind of what it was, right? You bred this or you had this and you traded it to somebody else and they gave you something else. And now you're working with this species. And, you know, I don't know. I
think chasing something is a hollow pursuit. Now, having a goal or enjoying something that brings you happiness is one thing, but chasing a hollow pursuit will not lead you to where you want to go. You know, it's not, in the end, you're always like, well, I still feel like I have to do something because I'm not, you know, this person has this. Paul Harris has got this morph now, and I got to have that and this or that. And it's just like, at some point you have to be able to live your life too. And that's like, it's hard for me because I feel, and it's weird just being a co-host. Like, I feel like I'm undeserving as a co-host because I have no idea what's going on in the reptile community. I know so few less, people than Justin knows, but here I am, as a co-host and expected to like, comment on shit that sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I'm just not because I want to go live my life and I like what I like. I like to do what I want to do, but I don't give a shit about anything anybody else is doing anymore. Like, it's not important to me,
Right.
Like all the like the backbiting and like the showing off. And it's just like, I could go for it, man. Go for it. I just,
you don't affect me in my room. Bye. It's like,
I feel 100% like you do now, Eric. I don't, it's just, I enjoy what I enjoy and I get a pleasure out of,
I think it just comes down to surrounding yourself with similar minded people, I've done it with Keith. I've given him gelatins. He's given me this, that, the other. He's saying like, "Oh, if I ever breed Bolins, I'm gonna give him." And it's just like, "Nah,
Keith, give me that poison pill."
No, but the point is like, here's like he doesn't value. I guess he's not looking at the value that he could get for that. He's looking at the value to put it in the hands of somebody that's not saying that it would be me, but I'm saying that he's looking at it and saying, okay. Similar to what you're looking at, right, Chuck? Where you're saying, okay, who am I going to get these to? Like, okay, maybe I'm going to chart rather than, I don't know, what were the Moluccans were like, what, $7,000 that just went up and it was just, then it got pulled down.
Hold
on, what?
These were Marcel.
$7,000.
7,500.
Yeah, we talked about it on Carpets and Coffee and kind of. I'm not trying to throw that guy under the bus at all. It's not about that
Dude,
or
you
anything.
can price your snakes at whatever you want to price.
Yeah, you know what? Shit, what people charge for stuff.
More power to you. Yeah,
absolutely.
But that definitely is not fostering someone doing well with that animal. That is inarguable.
Correct.
That is not the goal, and that's fine. I mean, everyone can be where they're at, and that's totally fine. But there's no way in hell that person has any interest in seeing that further Moluccans in captivity. No way. No, there's not one iota of that statement that comports with that line of fact.
And then you have to wonder. You have to wonder who you have to wonder who's influencing that price, right?
Sure.
It depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to somebody that's a reptile dealer at a show, well, they're going to say, well, shit, nobody has them, man. I would put, $8,000 on them or whatever it would be. Like if Bolins are 10, then they must be 8,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's appalling. No,
again,
hashtag no, appalling.
Rob says,
but when you see, 3,500 for wild caught stuff that's being sold, it's like,
and that's just as wrong, Chuck. That's just as wrong. That's not about keeping them in captivity.
White lips have exploded.
I'm not arguing for them. I'm just saying that you see where it where it happens, and look. So the benefit that we all publicly have when we value stuff at a reasonable price and we are successful with it in a captive setting is a public good, and the way we're valuing things now is for a personal good. It's how much can I be enriched by doing this, and in the and both things happen. They both work. Like America is full of very, 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 very wealthy people who've enriched themselves greatly by that mentality. But it doesn't. You can see the inequity in our society, and it's the same thing in reptiles. We're not going to get where we want to get by making things, rare things, difficult things. The personal good, right? That's just how I see it. But I am not telling anybody how to behave with animals or it's not my place. It's not but you're not going to see me engage. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to seek out people, who are like-minded, who share my views and share, and hopefully, that they stick true to their integrity and they behave in the same way and don't sell out to just make money. And eventually, and like I said, they're brown scrub pythons. They're not, people are gonna be like, I don't even know how much I could sell this for. And there's none of them out there. So it's like,
right.
I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. I wish, and Justin and I talk a lot about where we would love to see the community go and things we need to do moving forward to help legitimize ourselves. And I would love to work with AZA facilities and I would love to do stuff like that. But the hesitance on their part is warranted.
Yeah, it is.
And it comes from a long history of being like, what the fuck? And they're like, I'm not doing it. They don't want to work with us because they have to concern themselves with the fallout of what it would look like when private hobbyists start making bad decisions with AZA
animals.
Stock, right? And I get it. But man, if we want to be legitimized, and it's easy to marginalize reptile keepers. So it's like, it's such a steep uphill battle with us, and, education, community, all those things are things we need, but it's just not things we do very well. So it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. That's why I like to just be like, screw them all. I'm out.
I'm out. Yeah.
I thought it was just me.
Quickly become that one.
Become
that one reptile guy that can't be found and only appears randomly at shows, and you have to catch him in order to buy animals.
And I'm sure when I bred those Traciae the first time, people were like, "Who?
Yeah,
who the fuck is that? I don't know who that is." Like, you know what I mean?
Is he on YouTube?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, I would say, had it been somebody who's more well known, the fanfare of it would have been much larger. But it was literally all of the people in the Somalia Facebook group who liked it, and that was it.
Yeah.
I had like one or two people message me like, "Hey, I heard you bred those. Good job." Or maybe we could talk sometime. But it wasn't like a big thing. Cool. Fine with me.
Right.
I don't,
Which makes you think, is it about the person or is it about the animal?
Again, right? Again, like, I don't have my pulse on the reptile community, but like I said, I feel like once the mystique, of doing something nobody's done wore off, everybody disappeared. And especially because it was done by somebody nobody really, is not out there, nobody heard of. Who cares about that dude? And it's like, maybe that's just me being an asshole, grumpy old man kind of thing. But, it's, you just see it enough and you're just kind of like, well.
No, Chuck, I think you're 1,000% right. And it fits into the Solomon Island tree boas that I've done, Jamaican boas, Puerto Rican, all this stuff, that it's not as extreme and that people have done it before. So, it's way more than the Halmahera context. But same thing, what became clear to me was you better not be doing this for the social media likes associated with this. Because, I first litter of Solomon Island tree boas came 5 or 6 years after I first had, got adults and all this, that working with them this whole time. Oh, your post that had this thing that is the thing that has been the culmination of this 5 or 6 year effort, right? I got 200 likes. Well, that's nothing in this context, right? And it's like, and then it's gone. Yeah, and it's like, well, I'm sure as heck glad that I'm not doing it for the value of the social media likes, because that wasn't very satisfying. So you better be in it for your own self, because that ain't going to help anything.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess we will close out on maybe you could talk real quick about keeping your carpets outside.
Yeah. So like I said before, I'm out here in Southern California, San Diego, California. And so, I've talked with people for years about like, oh, you could totally keep stuff outside. And I have a big old pair of coastal carpet pythons that I got. The female I got from Ben Team way back in the day off of MP. And the male is Camus from Luke Snell's Red Line.
Ah, nice.
So, yeah. And I've had them for years now. And I said, you know what? I'm going to build a cage. I'm going to put them outside, and I'm just going to see how that goes. Because, they're both probably 20 something years old now. So they're older animals. Like I'm really not trying to breed them necessarily, just, setting them out there and letting them live. And it's just been really interesting putting them outside. And it goes back to, stop what you think you understand and just make some observations. And, I've got them in probably a 4x3 by 3 enclosure, and they have like a sub, like I don't know how to, like on the it's partitioned to where they can kind of go inside like a large hide box, and they have one of those cane heat mats where when it gets really cold in the winter for us, which 40 degrees at worst. Right. Yeah.
I think we're in the teens over here. So yeah.
So, I can put that on and they're just fine. But my observations were that they'd be out and cruising at 50 degrees, like just like nothing, not just that they don't, the heat would be on, and they would just both be out in the middle of the night in 50 degrees, just out doing their thing.
That's awesome.
They'll bask a little. Sometimes they won't even bask during the day, but at night when it's cold, they're out. So it's like, man, what? What does it make? I don't understand what's happening here anymore. Like, so, again, it's always one of those things that challenges me into like, I thought I got this, I thought I knew, but man, that's crazy. And so I've also got a pair of diamond pythons that I want to move outside. And I want to see how they behave. And, and then I'm like, I just want to move all my carpets outside, and I've got a pair of variegata, some albino variegata that I got from Carrie and Todd, and I want to put them outside. And I think Justin made the comment, well, it's probably a little too cold for them. Like, is it? I don't even know anymore. Is it? Like, so it's just been really interesting to keep outside, because it challenges and cuts at those things that you take for granted. Like, oh, they're once it gets cold or it's below 60 degrees, they're not out. Like, no, they're totally out. And you don't associate coastal carpets with some of the, I mean, obviously they experience some cooler temperatures, but they're not on the cool side. They're not that southern ranging Australian carpet python, right? Like you're thinking like Spilota or McCaffey as those really bulletproof cold, or even breadlie that get that cold desert stuff. But, I guess I didn't associate. I thought the behavior that I see is not the behavior definitely that I expected to see. But if you're in, a Mediterranean climate, man, and you're not keeping outside, like I recommend it. It's super cool. And, I save power that way. So, if you can, we all know that our power bills never get any cheaper year to year. I thankfully have solar being in Southern California, so that definitely helps me out for my indoor stuff. But hey, man, why not capitalize? Like, I've really found that interesting. Mostly the weather, their activity during times where I didn't think that I'd see them as active was probably the most strikingly interesting thing. Other than that, they're just carpet pythons living their life
outdoors. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome though. I wish.
That's the so that came directly from Luke, that girl.
Yeah. So Luke was moving him out, and I think he had put him up. I don't remember if he had put him up for sale or what had happened. But yeah, I was just like, yeah, I'll totally, he sold them to me pretty cheap, but he was, and Luke was kind of getting out of snakes at that point. Right.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh dude. And Camus that's a fucking badass red coastal, man. Like
that's who produced V.
Yeah.
Oh,
shit.
That's V.
Yeah. That's like a founding line red coastal.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
All right.
Like that's
that's related to your red coastal.
Yeah,
I got a granddaughter. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So,
and I heard that name. I was like, man, I haven't heard that name in forever.
Right? So, but it's fun, isn't that cool? That
I love that.
You get like an old coastal that's like the from a lineage that you just don't that's like so far down the road now, but you never hear about those old animals. And I just like when those blasts from the past names come back up, and you're like, oh my god, I remember that. Yeah. Like that's super cool. So,
Bumblebee tuna.
Yeah. Man, you just like pulled that one right out of my brain. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Jesus.
Awesome.
So yeah.
All right. Owen, you want to hit a couple closing questions and we'll wrap it up?
That. Just hang on one sec. I have to pull them up now. All right. Good ones for Chuck. All right. Which species have you tried to breed and failed the most?
I never really had any luck with breadlie.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. And it may have just, I only had a pair. I really didn't get into a ton of them. I had some het lazics, some het stripe lazics that they just didn't do anything. And I tried and I just had no luck. And it may have been the animals. It may have been me. Who knows? And I mean, I've had the here's and there's, but that was probably the one that probably caused me like the most, like, at some point in my carpet python keeping career, I wanted to breed all of the species, subspecies, get through all that, and so I was on that path, and that really bummed me out. But in no way did I even come close to breeding all of them. So whatever. Gotcha. Who gives a shit about flushing dreams down the toilet? So yeah,
not on this program.
No. In North America, the toilet swirls this way. Yeah.
To build a machine to make it go the other way when we're in Australia.
Or exactly.
All right. What species do you have regret passing on?
Ooh. Man, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. Because I didn't pass on a lot of species when I got the opportunity. What I did do was get overloaded and realize that the amount of snakes and stuff that I was keeping was not unsustainable. And I gave a lot of that stuff up, and a lot of it went to, my Malgline inlands went to Justin, and like a lot of that stuff stayed in the orbit somewhere.
Right. In the family.
I really miss those inlands. But yet at the same time, I'm like, I'm happy not having all those snakes too. So it's a weird, like, it's, I feel like I'm kind of giving you the political retort to this question. Like, I'm not really answering it, but I'm giving you a response. But yeah, I definitely miss probably the inlands. They were so cool, and I got them so early on. And like, I swear to God, it was like me and Justin and maybe a couple other people like, no, you should get these. They're awesome. Like, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Now, they're out there a little bit more, and you hear people are like, well, they're so cool. They're so different. Like, that's what I was saying. Like, oh my God. Like, but they were super fun, and I do regret not having them right now.
Cool. And what is one piece of advice you can give to the reptile community?
One?
Just one.
One?
Only one.
Didn't we just talk about 10 of them?
For
I mean,
God's sakes, yeah.
Yeah, I know. That is true.
You want me to pull an original one out now?
Yeah. They made me redo the questions. They're very mean to me, so I had to be mean to the guests. It's
I got you. It's all right. I'll answer.
Okay.
I think if I had to tell people anything is don't worry about what other people are doing. Don't worry about don't get caught up in the game. Don't get caught up in the idea that you gotta have this, have that, do this, do that. And there's no such thing as being somebody in reptiles. Like, you can be somebody. You can. And I look up to the Casey Lasniks. I look up to a lot of different people, and it has nothing to do with being the man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or like what you've done. And so I just, like, as I said before, I think chasing that is a hollow pursuit, and finding what you get out of it, what you love. And you know what? Going too far, getting too many animals, that's a natural progression. And it's hard not to do, because there's so many cool reptiles, and you get wrapped up in it, and but don't be afraid to just be like, okay, this is, I'm on the wrong, I shouldn't stay this course.
Mm-hmm.
But work with what you like. I think that's just, and that's, I think most people who are kind of been doing it and is on kind of I feel like, I guess what I'll say is, and I've said this, is that I think there is a trajectory of reptile keeper, and a lot of us have that similar story, and we can all relate because we all go through the same thing. And people who have been in it kind of the same amount of time as you tend to have your same kind of outlook, because they were like, yeah, I did that too. I get it. I'm just not there anymore. And as somebody who's not there anymore to somebody who may be still there, like, don't feel like you have to engage in that. It's not, I'm not telling you not to. I'm just telling you, like, you may end up not as happy as you think having all that stuff.
There are other ways.
Yes.
Yep. And then I guess the last one would be, if you could restart your reptile keeping career over again, what would you change, if anything, and what would it be?
Damn. You do write some dickhead questions. Oh,
That one came from Nipper. That one I stole.
It sounds
Nipper.
like a nipper right there.
Yeah.
I got nippered.
Yeah.
Man, that's tough. Oh, wow. I would probably go the monitor route, where I was doing a lot of small, like, dwarf monitors of a lot of different species. Like, I just love, Mike and like all of the I just think they're so smart, so rich, so fulfilling, and yet such a challenge. And you don't need to keep a ton of them to have a very fulfilled full-time, hobby. So I think, and I did monitors for a while, and it was just like, I had snakes, and I had, and if I could reset where I didn't have snakes, I didn't have, day geckos and, other stuff, and I could just focus on monitors, that's probably the way I would go.
Cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah, they are addicting. Woo.
Dude, big time. I mean, they're just, they look at you and their behaviors, and like, there is nothing funner than watching an Aki, chase down crickets that are running around an enclosure. Like, it's the most entertaining thing I've ever seen. Like, it's so awesome.
Yeah. I get to do it while I edit podcasts every week.
Yeah.
Why I just get captivated by them. Like, oh man,
that's why it takes so long. Yeah.
And this is why the Podfather now lives high as a hog in his house of heaven, right?
Yeah.
For sure. I'm with it.
It's good stuff.
I'm with it.
Well, thanks for coming on, Chuck. Major congrats.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's really good to kind of come on and chop it up with you guys. It's been a long time. I appreciate it. Hopefully more to come.
Absolutely.
And thanks.
We'll have to do a Fight Club NPR versus the Fight Club.
I'm super down. I know. Well, yes. I know Owen is going to be the one that's going to come kicking and screaming, but I have the utmost faith that Eric can implement contractual obligations to create what we need, what the world needs. Yeah. I would love it, dude. I would love to get you guys on. That would be the shit.
Justin kept pitching that when we were in Arizona. It'd be like a lull. He'd be like, so wants to record a Fight Club. It's like, will you stop it? Like, we're in the middle of it. Like, we're on a mountain, dude. Like, so yeah, it was, but he was pushing hard.
Very cool. All right. Well, that will wrap it up. And we'll get the heck out of here. And until next week. So next week, we're on a roll of these. Well, it's actually tomorrow for us.
Tomorrow for us. Nobody will hear it till next week. But yeah.
No, not till 2 weeks. But Lisa's coming on to talk about breeding white-lip pythons. So should be. I did that one for you.
Thank you. I need to know because I have several that are staring
trying to put these little seeds in your brain.
I'm trying to slowly get it going. There.
Get that white whale ticked off your list.
God, blackface white lips, and then I can retire. Yeah.
That's when his contract is up.
Well, they actually didn't know that's the thing that will set me free. That's the end of the contract. Yeah.
Correct.
So
it's your only way out. Man.
Only way out. Blackface white lip bags.
No pressure.
None.
I mean, I could have gave you Boland's.
He was generous.
Like that, but, I was being a little lenient with you. Contractual obligation that you have to fulfill.
I mean, what? That was only the first species that Dr. Richard Ross ever bred, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, in a fucking.
I mean, not a big deal.
MBD. Under an incandescent light bulb? Like, I hate that guy. Like, I love him and I hate him. Like, come on.
He's like, I noticed it was cold in my basement.
And so they bred. It's like, what?
They just started breeding.
Got $600 worth of computer systems on the ones I got downstairs, and they're like, I don't know. Yeah.
Student of the serpent, my man. Student of the serpent.
Word.
So, if you want to see what we got going on, all the different podcasts, be sure to check out Chuck and Justin's podcast, Reptile Fight Club, over on MoreliaPythonRadio.com. If you want to get in touch with us, info@MoreliaPythonRadio.com. And that's all I got.
Go to check out the Teespring store for all your MPR merch. Anyway, and then also, and it's gone. Lost it. That's it for all of us. We'll catch everybody next week for some more Morelia Python Radio. Good night. Goodbye. Good night. Fuck it.